Hello everybody, welcome to our talk show. اللهم ارحم شهداءنا وشافي جرحانا وفك القيد عن أسرانا. During this aggression Gaza, actually we are trying to focus on many issues that been appeared during the last couple of days. Some of my friends told me that this is the first world media war actually, and there is a lot of misinformation, disinformation, media biased, manipulation in this world. I would like to welcome my guest in the studio, Ms. Shtaya, the digital rights expert, and she is campaigns and partnership manager at MENA and corporate engagement lead. Welcome, Mona.
Thank you, Talat. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you for being with me today in this exceptional circumstances to our people, our nation. Let me get back to the history. When we talk about misinformation, disinformation, the manipulation, what we are facing right now, we don't mean appearing, or we don't being able to know what is going on in the world. Is there was any misunderstanding of the awareness, or this is the real world that we are living in? This is the real truth, but there have been some kind of masks, maybe for some people, not all of us, of course. Maybe the experts like you, maybe some people, maybe some journalists, they knew the truth. They knew what is going on. But now there is a real media war in our content on social media. What is going on, Mona?
So this is not the first time it's happening. Every single time there is attack, there is a crisis, there is conflict, not only in Palestine. The whole war is about information. Because information is power. Like who owns information, or who owns the media outlets, or who controls that, obviously they have more power. In the Palestinian case, every single time that there is attack on Gaza Strip, not only in Gaza Strip, there is attack here on the ground, we can observe how the first thing is being targeted is the telecommunication infrastructure, media outlets. We've seen before, even not during this war, but like in 2021, how several media outlets buildings like Al Jazeera, among others, and AP in Gaza Strip were bombed in 2021. That because this war is a war on information. Last week, when the Israelis invaded Nur Shams refugee camp in the West Bank, first thing they've done is cutting all the means of telecommunication. So we can observe how the Israeli control over the telecommunication sector, or over the ICT sector, since Oslo Accords happened, is also depriving and denying Palestinians from accessing affordable, safe, and high-quality internet. And this obviously leads to their control on our connectivity from one hand, which means like whenever there's attack or invasion or something like that, they are able to cut off or to shut down the internet from those areas in the Palestinian territory, besides cutting off the electricity, which means that you are unable to communicate with the world, to spread your narrative, and to tell your story. Keeping in mind the whole unfair coverage of what's happening in the international mainstream media, and sometimes, unfortunately, the international mainstream media have been trapped in transforming or sharing some disinformation, affected or following some world political leaders. This means that cutting off internet, cutting off electricity, and controlling information is power in this current situation, and is leading to having a mono narrative on the social media platforms and in the media, in the international mainstream media, which by a way or another is also playing like a crucial role in shaping the international audience around what's happening in Palestine.
But do you think they can?
Well, obviously,
with this media bias, they can do it.
Well, obviously, like in the past couple of weeks, we've seen how there, like some investigations, some investigative reports have unbunked what is happening there, unbunked some disinformation. We can give a clear example on the 40 beheaded babies that were basically mentioned as soon as this attack started. It was this piece of information was basically mentioned by the US president and then by mainstream media like CNN, among others. And they were sharing this piece of news without even investigating that until the Anadolu. They asked the Israeli forces.
They claimed professionality.
Exactly. And they asked for proof to tell this piece of news, like, can you show us like your evidence? And the Israeli offensive forces, they said that we don't have any evidence on this, and this leads to have like this investigative report that basically said that this is not true. And this is one of many other stories that are that like we can hear now, we can see the news, we can how also this is basically leading to real world harm. Like there are massive attacks against people, Palestinians and Muslims, unfortunately, not only in Palestine. Like we've seen the 6-year-old kid in the US, the Palestinian American Muslim Al-Fayoumi, I forgot his first name, unfortunately, but how he was killed because based on this disinformation and this anti-Palestinian racism that have been spread worldwide. So the effect of this information is going far beyond Palestine. It's a global effect, and it's also leading to more extremism and manipulation when it comes to what's happening here. So we should keep this in mind. So the question is not like can they or can't they, because it's different. Like it's a control, and they can control that. They are controlling the ICT infrastructure, and no one is like it can stop that.
But they are facing consequences at this time by their audience, by the public opinion. Do you think it was a stupid reports about that, not smart enough to expense such fake news?
I know what you mean. Like you mean people's power around the world.
Absolutely.
We can see demonstration, protests around the world. We've seen like over the past weekend, like massive protests all over the world, in the US, in the UK, and in many Arab cities, and like all over the world. So people might relate to that because some of the people also are living under oppressive regimes who also sometimes control some media outlets, and as a result of that they are able to spread this information. Many of the Arab countries, they cut off the internet during election times, which means that the main party or the ruling party in the state is spreading their own narrative, which is also might have some disinformation. So people are not like fooled. People are aware of what's happening. However, many people around the world are not pro-Palestinian, neither pro-Israelis. They are just like neutral people, do not know what's happening here. So whenever they hear CNN or BBC or such media outlets that are just repeating the same piece of news that was mentioned by the Israeli propaganda or Hasbara, then they might tend to believe that. Why not to believe it? If you don't have any idea about what's happening in this geographic area, and someone is telling you that there is 40 beheaded babies here, you will definitely think about that. So why not?
Yeah. The fight against Palestinian content has escalated. Maybe hundreds or thousands of Palestinian pages and accounts are getting banned and shut down. Do you think that we have to react on this? What should we do? Now we come just trying to fight this issue and facing some issues like that. But we still have the Facebook, we still have the Twitter, we still have the Instagram and all of it. Where is a massive fight against the Palestinian content? What should we do?
To start with, we are doing. but we should do more. This is not a new fight. This is not a
Yeah,
new battle.
absolutely.
It started like the Israeli digital militarism started since the social media started. Like the battle on the ground has been like for during the past decade. Basically, this battle on the ground has also extended to the social media platforms and to the online platforms generally. And every single time we are observing an escalation on the ground, we can see also escalation on the social media platforms. We can see more oppression for people on social media platforms. This is not only for Palestinians.
Yep.
It happened like ironically since like way before, but like in our region we all remember the democratic revolutions that happened in 2021, in 2010 and 2011, where people were utilizing social media platforms to organize and mobilize themselves to protest against their oppressive regimes and authoritarian regimes. At that time, people thought that social media platforms are the new freedoms, are the new democracy for our region. However, like not far away of those days, we've seen how there is a new authoritarianism has been formed by those digital platforms, and it's now called digital authoritarianism, where social media platforms are oppressing people, and in many times there is this unholy marriage between the social media platforms or the tech companies and some oppressive regimes. This is the case of Palestinians because in 2015, the Israelis, they established something called the Israeli Cyber Unit, which basically works on escalating Palestinian content on a daily basis to the tech giants, asking them to take down Palestinian content. Unfortunately, social media platforms are not transparent about the real numbers that they are getting from the Israeli Cyber Unit. However, the Israeli Cyber Unit in 2019 mentioned that in 2019 they've mentioned that they have sent over 20,000 requests to the social media platforms. And the word request here doesn't mean a post or a tweet. It means a communication message that might have 100 or maybe 1,000 cases to be taken down. According to the same unit, they mentioned that the social media platforms are approving 87 to 90% out of those requests, which means 90% of those 20,000 requests have been approved and have been taken down, which means that the narrative on the platforms is not like a pure narrative between the Palestinians and the Israelis. There are oppressed and oppressive regime. There is an occupier and occupied. That one thing. And the other thing is tech companies themselves and how their policies are biased against Palestinians and other people in the global majority. And this basically would take me back to 2021, where social media platforms were oppressing hugely like Palestinians on the social media platforms. And at that time, we were demanding social media platforms, basically Meta, to conduct a human rights due diligence by an independent party to check how they are moderating Palestinian Arabic content versus how they are moderating the Israeli Hebrew content. After a huge campaign, and after also pressure on Meta's oversight board, which is the governance body of Meta, they approved that. They hired an entity called the BSR, or Business for Social Responsibility, and they worked on this human rights due diligence. The results of this human rights due diligence was published in September 2020. 2022. Sorry, and it confirmed the results of that human rights due diligence. It confirmed that Meta's content moderation policies are biased against Palestinians. They are largely moderating Palestinian Arabic content, under moderating or barely moderating Israeli Hebrew content, which basically deprive Palestinians of the right to free speech, gathering and assembly, political participation, and non-discrimination. However, when it comes to the Israelis, this biased content moderation policies is allowing Israelis to keep their incitement, hate speech, violent speech against Palestinians on the social media platforms, which basically leads to a real-world harm. Whenever we see like Israeli settlers in the West Bank are attacking Palestinians in the streets, and we've seen recently how they are weaponizing them, how they are providing them with weapons to attack Palestinians in the West Bank. So this is basically this violence in the West Bank, or sometimes even in the binational cities. It doesn't come just because people want to do that and it's like separated from what's happening on the social media platforms. No, it's well connected, it's interconnected, and this social media violent speech and incitement is basically reflected to a real world harm and in the forms of attack against Palestinians in the West Bank and in Gaza Strip. During the current events, we've seen also Israeli, and even from before, but like it's obvious nowadays, Israeli politicians are sharing content that contains incitement and hate speech, violent speech. We've seen some videos that they are
Actually,
bragging.
They are proud to do this.
Exactly,
Yeah,
they are
this is part of the
bragging
war.
about how powerful, how deadly is this attack, and there has been advertisement on YouTube that is telling the whole world. My friends in Germany and in some other European cities were telling me that they are seeing those ads where Israel is justifying their attack on Gaza Strip to protect their civilians. And such kind of advertisements, it's manipulative, because like they are not telling the truth, they are not telling the power asymmetry, they are not telling anything about the occupying power and the occupied people. They are not putting anything into context. They are just saying we are attacking people in Gaza because like we want to protect our
As
civilians.
a trend.
Exactly. And going back to our previous point, when I told you, if you are just a neutral person who doesn't know what's happening here and you've seen this advertisement, you would appreciate a government to protect their civilians because you have anything in mind about the power asymmetry in this country. But just like thinking out loud, this is happening because social media platforms are not investing enough resources. They are not interested in protecting people in our region. Not only Palestine, we're not alone. There are so many other people in the global majority countries, such as in Myanmar, and Western Sahara, and Latin America, and other places in Africa, who are also struggling with tech companies in the same way that Palestinians are struggling with that. There has been massive genocide in Kashmir against Muslim communities there, and in China and Uyghur against Muslim communities there. That was also because of what happened. However, if we compare that with last year when the Russian invasion happened, social media platforms, they quickly took strict measures to protect people in Ukraine, because they recognize the power asymmetry from one hand, and from the other hand, they have been pressured by global north countries, such as the US, among other global north powerful countries, to protect people in Ukraine. And here we should keep in mind the whole economic power relationship and the whole economic political powers that are basically
Strongly related.
And even if you reflect that on the current events in Palestine, you can also see how the US is also supporting Israel, and how that might be reflected to the social media content moderation policies and their measurements to protect people in this area. Keeping in mind that even like without the US, like Israel is a strong ads purchasing power to the social media platforms. And 2021, the Israel ads purchase...
They are triple maybe than the Middle East countries or whatever.
Yeah, if we just like have a small comparison, in 2021, Israel ads purchasing power was equivalent to the ads purchasing power of Jordan, Palestine, and Egypt combined together. So this can give us like just a small idea how this might
How they can use it,
influence
yeah.
how this could be weaponized. And unfortunately, social media platforms are not investing resources based on the risk in the market. They are the assisted, like the risk assessment that they are doing. However, they are investing based on the market size, like the ads purchasing
Yeah.
power, among other things. So this can give us like a clear example on what is happening. And like over the past couple of weeks, there has been so many problems, for example, with Instagram, where because like we are engaging with social media platforms, obviously, to influence their decisions. Like it's been a long time to put pressure on tech companies to change their policies. And they were apologizing for having different technical glitches. And unfortunately, the repetitive biased cases, the repetitive oppression that Palestinians are facing when it comes to the social media platforms confirms that it's not like a small technical glitch, or it's not a technical glitch here and there. It's more about a platform failure to protect people in certain countries. And this is important, just to think about a platform failure, not a minor
Yeah.
technical glitches
For
here
that,
and there.
digitally, do you think in the future we might have some alternatives, maybe?
Well, there are different.
Why not?
No, I'm not saying no. I'm saying we are now observing some alternatives, some open source platform. I believe you might heard about Mastodon, among other like Blue Sky and other open source platforms that might be less controlled by the traditional capitalistic business models that social media platforms unfortunately are following, because their business model is basically based on the ads and ads purchasing power, as I mentioned before.
Yeah.
The others, they are not. However, they are not mainstreamed yet. But why not? It might be mainstreamed. I mean, if we join the forces with other people to put pressure on social media platforms, we might also think about using alternatives. But if we leave social media platforms to those alternative platforms, that's also another question that we as Palestinians should ask ourselves. Do we want to leave this? Do we want to create a new gap?
It's not the solution.
Exactly. That's not the solution. The solution is putting pressure on social media platforms, having more political advocacy through Congress members, through European Parliament members, and through the Business and the Human Rights Council, the UN mechanisms, to pressure social media companies to invest more resources to protect people, and to protect people over their profit, because there is this kind of equation, profit or people. It's not like a profit or people. It's we want to protect people, and then you are making profit. You are tech giants who are making like billions of dollars annually, and when it comes to protecting people, you are relying on limited resources, civil society organizations, to document some cases and to send that your way, and that doesn't work. Like, this is causing the platform failure that we are observing now, and we should rethink the whole structure and increase our pressure on social media platforms to invest more resources to protect people.
So you believe we have to keep moving
Yes.
with those platforms, even if we have some alternatives?
Yeah, we should utilize all of the platforms, because our voices should be everywhere, and we should keep the fight on that,
Which
to
is
have fair policies.
long-term and hard struggle.
Yes, and there's also a lack of coordination when it
Yeah.
comes to the official role in protecting people Whereas, like the Israeli government, they established this Israeli cyber unit to put pressure on social media platforms. Whereas, what did we do,
We don't have a vision,
officially in Palestine in
unfortunately.
this? Unfortunately, we don't.
Unfortunately.
We have so many people who
Even at this moment, Mona,
exactly,
we don't have
yeah,
any vision. We don't have any message to the world,
exactly.
unfortunately.
There's a lack of united narratives about what's happening here. Like the 40 beheaded babies was like shared by the head of, like the prime minister, and then like different other people, and it was like all over the place. What was our narrative? We didn't have any. Did we have
And there
any
been
counter
there been
narrative?
thousands of positive messages. We don't
Exactly.
use it.
No.
We didn't use it actually
Yes.
as we have to do.
Yeah, and actually, like if you just have a look about at the Palestinian narrative on the social media platforms, you can easily observe that we don't have a narrative. We have pieces of news that we are sharing and echo championing each other. Like we are hearing each other. We're not having a concrete, solid narrative about what is happening here. And there is a lack of putting things into context. I know like there are some efforts here and there by some human rights defenders, by some organizations, and this is appreciated. However, this is not mainstreamed. This is not like also led by official efforts to guide and to coordinate the efforts between like the civil society organizations, activists, and other actors, and even academics. So there is this mess, and this basically is also reflected on our media situation, media organizations, and how they are seeing that. Like there is no pressure, there is no like there is a mess
Yeah.
when we describe the
There is
situation.
no plan. There is
here.
no vision actually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're lacking vision.
Finally, what message you think that we could talk about in 2 minutes for the influencers, for the journalists? We are trying actually to cover this gap in our situation, as we don't have. I don't believe that the Ministry of Information playing their part. I don't believe that many of them who can do different things in this media front to get a universal message, and using every single post to at least win in this media war, because it's part of the aggression on Palestinians, part of the aggression of our history, our religion, our traditions, everything in Palestine. What message do you believe? What content we should have at this stage?
Well, I believe that we should keep in mind whenever we are telling the narrative that we are not speaking with definitely people who knows what's happening here. We should educate people, and we should educate ourselves about other people's struggle, because so many people around the world are supporting Palestinians. However, what do we know about their struggles? What do we know about their history? We should make more intersectional advocacy, more intersectional work. And I know, like, I've mentioned how our ads purchasing power is so weak. It's like it doesn't mean anything if we put that globally. But if we think about other people in the global majority countries who are also might be supportive to what's happening in Palestine, we can have more influence. One community can do nothing if we are alone, but if we are joining the forces with other people around the world, then we can make more influence. We've seen how different people were protesting for Palestinians, so we should believe in people's power and change to put more pressure on their governments, to put more pressure on social media platforms to end this digital bias against Palestinians among other oppressed people around the world. And as for our narrative, we should work more on our narrative. We should try to share our messages and our stories in different languages on different platforms. We don't want to continue talking to our family on our Facebook page in Arabic and just keep like having the dua thing or something like that. It's good. However, we should think that's not enough. That's not a narrative. If you share, then you should think about what you are sharing. You should double check news before sharing that, because we don't want to be part of the disinformation or misinformation game that is happening, because it's also
It's not our fight.
this is not our fight. But also you should double check that before sharing anything, because we want to think also about our people. Someone who's living under siege for 16 years and who is struggling for the 18 days now with cutting internet and cutting electricity. If they just open their Facebook and see a piece of news or a post that you've shared and it has misinformation, this will make their life way worse. This would cause depression, because people won't be able under these circumstances to go fact check. It's your responsibility now here to fact check anything, so you can at least contribute positively and sharing what's happening and documenting. And the last thing is, we should continue the fight and documenting human rights violations on the ground and sharing that on social media platforms, because this is helping us and spreading our narrative. However, we should think also about humanizing Palestinians whenever we are sharing stories. We don't have to go to a couple of parents who just like lost their child and try to ask them, while they are unaware about the situation around them, what's happening, and try to ask them like different questions that is also dehumanizing them or dehumanizing their babies or something like that. We should keep this in mind. The humanization aspect is also missed a lot in those circumstances. We've seen how the dehumanization, like when the 40 beheaded, I keep repeating this case because the 40-headed babies were massively shared around the world and they were humanized. However, over 2,000 Palestinian child were killed over the past 2 weeks, and no one can see is talking about their human stories. So we are dehumanized because of this hate speech, racism, and disinformation around us. So we need to work on that. We have a lot to do.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mona, for being with me.
Thank you so much for having me.
I hope we have more time to talk a lot of topics, which is so important for our community at this stage, and of course for Palestinians in other countries, especially in Europe and more locations. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. See you next time.